2023 NFL Divisional Playoffs Review. I'm starting off with the 49ers and Packers. We had 4 playoff games in the divisional round like we do every year. But the rivalry, 49ers and Packers, so meaningful to me being a 49ers fan because when I hear playoffs and rivalries, this is the first one I think of, the 49ers and Packers, and how could you not? For me, the first playoff game I ever watched, it was not the Super Bowl between the 49ers and the Chargers. When I could finally grasp the game, even just on a basic level, it was that first time these two teams went at it. The 49ers and Packers 95 season played in January 96. And you think about the legends on both sides in these record 10 games, playoff games, in less than 30 years. The quarterbacks, Steve Young versus Brett Favre, Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Then I had Jeff Garcia against Brett Favre. Then there was the change to Aaron Rodgers and Colin Kaepernick, Aaron Rodgers, and Jimmy Garoppolo, and now this newest chapter, Brock Purdy and Jordan Love. And it was a close game. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, and I even talk about the coaches, too, when you think about Holmgren and Seifert, and then McCarthy and Harbaugh, and now you got Shanahan, LaFleur. But we had a close game, and of course it had to be a rain game. There's a lot of history of bad weather and rain games, and even a little snow that we had in the playoffs a couple years ago. I mean, the 96 game, some know it even as the Mud Bowl in Lambeau. When I say 96, I'm talking about the 96 season. It was played in January 97, 49ers Packers. Ugly day for the 49ers. The Packers would advance to the Super Bowl and win. Other games where it was wet and we had weather play a factor, it was also the 97 championship game. And you know Brett Favre was a great bad weather quarterback. And you have to be a bad weather quarterback when you're playing in Green Bay. Brett Favre could do it, Aaron Rodgers could do it, and it looks like Jordan Love has it as well. 2002 regular season, 49ers and Packers, San Francisco. It was just a freezing cold game when the 49ers Packers played in the 2013 playoffs. Kaepernick in Lambeau. Talk about a memorable game. And then 2021 with the light snow coming down at Lambeau. 49ers and Packers. I mean, that's what we have with weather. And then now this entry in the rivalry with rain in San Francisco. Because we don't get that many rain games in San Francisco. Historically, there have been plenty in the playoffs. Rain games, wet games, soggy fields. It was fitting that you had it between the 49ers and Packers for 2023. And this really was an advantage for the Packers. Brock Purdy struggled in the rain. Didn't seem to affect Jordan Love. Jordan Love, at least in the first half, certainly outplayed Brock Purdy. And you can't just go by the box score. You have to see the game for yourself. And I'll just give a short recap of what we had in at least scoring plays, a scoring summary that the Packers went ahead 3-0. The 49ers came back, and the best pass of the day for Garoppolo, wow. Purdy, forgive me, Purdy was connecting with Kittle for 32 yards, touchdown. It was a beautiful throw, and you know why I may have been calling Purdy Garoppolo, because it was a Garoppolo-type game. he didn't look like Brock Purdy in this one. He looked like Jimmy Garoppolo, and Kyle Shanahan called the game as if Jimmy Garoppolo was out there. He lost some confidence in his starting quarterback. But 7-3, then the 49ers were able to hold again. So it was a bend, not break defense because the Packers were able to get down the field. So it's 7-6. And it's 7-6 at halftime, and the most frustrating part of the game wasn't even the performance to me. Oh, it certainly was. But for me, it was the coaching of Kyle Shanahan. Before halftime, where he lets all this time elapse off the clock, when I was thinking, oh, we could go and we should try for a touchdown. And you can go for a field goal. And I thought that was settling. And then it wasn't even a close field goal. I mean, you're not kicking in good conditions. You got a kicker, a young kicker who's lacking confidence in Moody, and then the kick gets blocked. So it's 7-6. You have a 1-point lead going into halftime, and then after halftime, it's a 3-and-out. They're done. 3-and-out, and they come away with no points by having the ball before half and more than enough time to score. They come up empty, and then right after halftime, nothing. So it remained a 7-6 game, but the Packers were able to get a touchdown. It was 13-7, Green Bay. And then there was the McCaffrey 39-yard touchdown run, 14-13. Then the Packers would go ahead again at the end of the third quarter, 21-14. Fourth quarter, and this one frustrated me. I thought they should have gone for it on fourth down. They decided to kick a 52-yard field goal with Jake Moody. It's 21-17. And then finally Christian McCaffrey scores a late touchdown with a minute and 7 seconds left. 24-21 49ers, which would be the final. And it was an ugly game. It was an ugly game. More on the 49ers side than the Packers. I can admit the 49ers should have lost this game. To me, the Packers played harder. They played better. They played smarter. They were better prepared. It was not a good game coaching for the 49ers, and it was not a good game execution on offense. Defense really disappointed me as well. I mean, who was worse, the offense or the defense? And I'd say the offense. You have to consider Deebo Samuel getting hurt was a big factor, and I still don't know how Juwan Jennings ever had a ball handed off to him. I mean, how does that happen? Coming out of halftime with Purdy and the communication or lack thereof with Kyle Shanahan just knowing your personnel, a mystery to me. Talk about the Packers' offense is, Jordan Love really just had 2 bad plays in this game, but it hurt. And turnovers, boy, do they matter in the playoffs. He was 21-34, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, versus Purdy, 21-39, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Though I say, if you looked at the whole game, who played better? Love did. It was just those 2 crushing interceptions that he threw. Aaron Jones averaged 6 yards on the ground. He had a 53-yard run, which a lot of us thought was the dagger. I was preparing for this game to be a loss, the way it was looking. As for the most part, the 49ers were able to prevent the big pass play, but there were so many times where the Packers were getting, it seemed like 5 yards in every first down, 5 yards, 5 yards. And there were very few negative plays. The 49ers couldn't sack Love. I mean, Jordan Love was solid. He was really solid in this one. And you can see why the Packers are excited. Because he has the tools. He has the skills. He has good size at the position. He's got a plus arm. He's accurate. He can throw sidearms. He can throw off balance. He can throw off, his back foot. he doesn't even need to step into a throw sometimes. He has that much zip on his throws. He doesn't even have to step into them. He can move really well. He's not really that much of a runner. He can really move well in the pocket. He has it. And it just surprised me that the 49ers struggled against the run. They struggled against the run throughout the year, but they struggled against the run as much as they did. And the defense really didn't have much fight in them. I mean, besides Nick Bosa, the rest of the defensive line was awful. The linebackers, I mean, the hero of the game was Dre Greenlaw, who had 2 interceptions. He doesn't get very many interceptions at all. I mean, if you look back at his career, I don't have the stats in front of me, but he's had very few interceptions, but he gets 2 in the same game off a quarterback in Jordan Love. You got to be careful. I may have even called him Aaron Rodgers at this point because he was looking so Rodgers-esque. I mean, the thing is, Jordan Love's looked like Aaron Rodgers in this particular game. Brock Purdy was looking like Jimmy Garoppolo. But the thing is, Jordan Love, which would remind you of Aaron Rodgers, is not just throwing and passing like Rodgers with, just pulling all these tricks out of the bag and also not just managing the game but making plays to win. Just not turning the football over. He just is not turning the ball over in these games. And this one, though, he looked like a young quarterback at the end in the second half of the game more, but right there at the end because, they had time. They had time and they had timeouts. He didn't need to force that throw in the middle of the field, and that would remind you of Brett Favre. I don't remember Rodgers getting hurt on a throw across the field like that. Packers fans may remember a game or two. I personally don't. He'd do it. But this was the type of throw that reminds you of Brett Favre in the championship game with the Vikings against the Saints in 2009. Terrible way to lose. A very impressive season, a good season for Green Bay. I mean, the 49ers, those 2 stops in the first half where they forced the Packers to kick for 3, came up really big. Later in the game, it mattered all right. But the Packers were able to throw pretty well. They ran so effectively, and it looks like a very promising future. They lose this game, yes, but way ahead of schedule, and the Lions have company. Whatever happens this season, just say even the Lions win the Super Bowl, they have company at the top of the NFC North next year because the Packers Packers beat them soundly in Detroit on Thanksgiving. And, they were rolling there at the end of the season. And I say again, they should have won this game. And you look at the 49ers versus the Packers defense. On offense, Purdy had a rough game. He didn't look like himself until the final drive. I mean, he had the great pass to Kittle, but passes that are too high, passes are too low. Very inaccurate. He was obviously struggling with the wet ball. Decision-making, I feel like, though he didn't throw interceptions, he got away with a few where he was throwing the ball in a lot of traffic. But at the end of the day, though he struggled, Brock Purdy's 3-1. Sometimes you do have to win ugly. Brock Purdy is 3-1 in the playoffs, and I don't even feel like I can count that one loss against him because he was hurt on the first possession on offense in Philadelphia. I mean, I feel like you can hardly tack that on his career record as a loss. He has 3 playoff wins. 3 playoff wins so far. How many playoff wins does Dak Prescott have in his entire career? Good question, huh? In his entire career, postseason career for Dak Prescott versus Brock Purdy's short career. Dak Prescott's, from what I'm seeing here, is 2-5. So what you have already is Brock Purdy has more playoff wins than Dak Prescott has in 2 seasons. He's 3-1. I mean, I say you could almost make him 3-0. How about that for a statistic? I haven't heard anyone throw that out on any of the 49ers shows or podcasts. Purdy has more playoff wins already than Dak Prescott. He's 3-1. Kyle Shanahan. I have to be very critical of him, and I'm not a Shanahan basher. He's been great for the 49ers. And, talk about Jim Harbaugh turning the 49ers around. He had to bring the 49ers up from the dumps, the toilet, the cellar. And Shanahan was 0-30 when trailing by 7 or more points in the fourth quarter in his career. This was the first game they came back. And that was something that Purdy was able to do that Garoppolo's never been able to do. Is he's now 1-30. And that was just a terrible statistic to think of. But the offense, McCaffrey was good. He only had 17 carries. He had the long run. He had 2 touchdowns. But the 49ers had no faith. Kyle Shanahan had no faith in any other running backs. No Mitchell. Of course, there was no Mason. What I would think is if Debo was healthy, he would really be treated like the number 2 running back. But we didn't get to see that. I mean, him being out certainly affected the game plan. But I don't want to hear excuses. You still got McCaffrey. You got Kittle. You got Ayuk. George Kittle had a very nice game. They just didn't give him the ball enough. And because of, the problems with the rain and the problems with Purdy having a really bad game, it seemed like when they got the ball to Kittle and McCaffrey, there was already a man right there waiting for him. And give credit to the Packers. They got pressure, enough pressure on Purdy throughout the game, and then they tackled extremely well. I thought the 49ers will be able to attack the Packers in the middle of the field, and that's where they're going to hurt them. Really didn't. Brandon Ayuk, very quiet game. He was contained, 3 catches for 32 yards. And if I'm going to have a criticism for the 49ers as a whole and the coaching staff, it's not very creative. I feel like they could have been more creative on offense. And one of the ideas I heard thrown out during the week was you could have spread McCaffrey out as a 3rd receiver, right? Because he's such a good receiver. Put him in the slot and see how well they cover him. That's something they could definitely consider doing, and they should consider doing. Will they? I don't know. And I think Debo is going to play this week. If he's 50%, he better play this week, even if he's out there just as a decoy primarily. He needs to be out there on the field. And then on defense, same thing. I mean, Chase Young, who was awful. I mean, he was getting blocked by receivers. He just 0 impact, and I've been so underwhelmed by him outside of his first game or 2 for the 49ers. Very little impact at all out of Chase Young. But how about, just mixing it up on the defensive line, giving some different looks. They were doing that combination where they were putting Bosa and Young together, which seemed to work, or even moving them inside. What happened to that? No interesting stunts on defense to free up Bosa, which has worked really well in the past. I mean, I haven't liked the defense. I think Ward was really good, and Lenore was good. The safeties, Safeties let something to be desired, and obviously Ambry Thomas struggled. Both kickers missed kicks in this one, and it it did equal out because it was just that the Carlson kick came late that he missed. If he made that field goal, then the 49ers could have only tied the game. But they get the win. They advance to the championship yet again. Don't feel good about it. That is not... I cannot think of a playoff win that I felt worse about walking away and discouraged. Discouraged. You move on, yes, but you got to play better than that. I never thought, on a positive side, I never thought the 49ers would be 6-4 all time against the Packers in the playoffs. They started out 0-3, then it was 1-4. It could have been 0-5. Wow. Never thought I'd see a day where the 49ers would take this thing over as they have. But the final score is 24-21, and instead of doing a 90-minute show, which I really haven't, and we could, it's just, sorry, I have other obligations, I have other things I need to do. I'd love to talk about this stuff all day, but let's get into the other games. Unlike the 49ers, who really didn't get it together until the very end of the game, the Ravens game against the Texans was very similar. You had a loose team with no expectations coming in, very hot young quarterback, very confident team in the Texans. The Texans kept it close in the second half. It was 10-10, right, between the Texans and the Ravens at halftime. But then the Ravens woke up. And they took over the second half. They shut out the Texans in the second half, and they outscored them 24-0. This Lamar Jackson, it wasn't an excellent game, but it was an important game. I think it was a confidence game for him that he can win playoff games, and certainly there was a lot of pressure both on the 49ers and the Ravens to win. And I say this is good for the league that both of the first-round teams and first-seeded teams went on to at least make it to the conference championship. When you're looking at how many number twos, twos and threes, and just teams with some of the best records are already out. Let's consider this. The Eagles and Cowboys are both out. The Bills are out, which we're going to get to. They're all out. So the twos haven't made it. And at least the ones have made it because, the regular season needs to matter, right? Sometimes we like upsets, we like underdogs, but it's not special when it happens all the time. But Lamar gets the win, and he throws for 152 yards. He's efficient, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and he also runs for 2 touchdowns, 11 carries, 100 yards, averaging 9.1 yards a carry. The Ravens had 229 yards rushing. On the other side, C.J. Stroud, he was good. Didn't throw for any touchdowns, but they just were overmatched by the Ravens. They couldn't run the ball at all, and he didn't make any mistakes, but they couldn't do anything. They couldn't get on the end zone against the Ravens. Their only touchdown was special teams. And the Ravens take care of their business, and, they get a little rust off, and they end up winning a one-sided game, 34-10. And they still look like the best team out there. In the AFC, certainly overall, I would say best team remains the Baltimore Ravens. And they will host the conference championship game. And that's very important for them because we know it's the Chiefs. You didn't want that game in Kansas City. Now for the NFC, back to the NFC, the Lions and the Buccaneers. This was an entertaining game. It was a back and forth game with the Lions winning at home. They win both their playoff games, wild card and divisional. Jared Goff is going good right now. He's confident. He has the fans behind him, his coaches behind him, his teammates are behind him. He had a good game. Baker Mayfield on the other side, he played well too. Didn't get much help though from his teammates. He threw for 349 yards, 3 TDs, 2 picks. Mike Evans had a really big game. And the problem for the Buccaneers was they're trailing as much as they did. They ran for 5.9 yards a carry. I mean, White was very effective for the Lions. Gibbs he had 8.2 yards a carry. I mean, he was very impressive. That speed. And you look at the Lions, they just have weapons. They put Goff in a position to succeed. St. Brown, Laporta, Gibbs. It's a good supporting cast, and it's an excellent offensive line. And on defense, you have guys making plays. I mean, the thing about the Lions is they bring a lot of blitzes. They bring corner blitzes, and they have a cornerstone player on defense in Hutchinson. The Buccaneers, to me, overachieved this year. They were only a 9-8 playoff team. The Lions, congratulations to them. Congratulations, you have made to the conference championship game for the first time since the 91 season against the Redskins, which they lost. And it's a time to celebrate. It's the best season they've had in over 30 years. And they're heading on the road for the championship. And this is a good team. It is a good team, but they're up against a much tougher opponent. But they're totally buying into what Campbell's preaching and what he said all along. They have a quarterback who's more confident. It seems like this is as good of a version as Jared Goff as we've seen. They can run the ball. They've got weapons for the quarterback. And they have some real effective defensive players. And just how strange was it watching a game in Detroit, a playoff game in that Sunday afternoon slot. It also was very weird because it was on NBC to go along with that. That's what was strange. It wasn't a Fox game. It was an NBC game. NBC/Peacocks had a lot of playoff games in the first 2 rounds, but they're done. It's Fox and CBS, as it always is, for the championship round. Congratulations, Lions. Enjoy this. And you got to make the most of it because of the division getting better. And you have no break from the Packers being good. Packers are good again. And they're going to get better. You can get better, but they're getting better, and they're getting better fast. But the Lions should have won this game. It's a good thing they did, but they should have beat the Buccaneers. Buccaneers were a very weak divisional champion in the South. Okay, final game. This was the best game of them all. I mean, my team, the 49ers, were the worst of all 4 winners. But this game was actually the best for last. CBS had it in Buffalo. Chiefs and Bills, finally, for the first time, Patrick Mahomes plays a road playoff game. But it didn't matter. He was unfazed. He was great. And the Chiefs defeat the Bills. And the Bills suffer and lose. Again, it came down to a field goal. But it wasn't all about that. The thing about it was the Bills were shut out in the fourth quarter at home. That can't happen. You got shut out. Yes, people are going to remember Tyler Bass missing the field goal. And, it was unfortunate they had such severe injuries, season-ending injuries for the Bills. They had such a great season. They got the number 2 seed after struggling mightily in the first half. They had the win streak. They had the home game against the Chiefs, yet the Chiefs still managed to beat them. And a lesser Chiefs team on top of that. Mahomes, 17-23, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire were extremely effective. They ran for 146 yards. Both teams ran the ball very effectively. Josh Allen, he rushed for 72 yards himself. So you see 146 on the ground for the Chiefs, averaging 6.1, and then you had the Bills with 182 with 4.7 yards a carry. And, not having Matt Milano hurt them because the Bills were just thin on defense, and they tried hard. They really gave a great effort out there. It just wasn't good enough. Travis Kelce returned more to his regular form in this one. Valdez-Scantling, what a great catch. That catch he had from Mahomes. Wow, that was an amazing play. Stephon Diggs, your number 1 receiver. 3 receptions, 21 yards. Oof. But I feel the difference in this one really was the Chiefs' defense. Although they're not what they were, not really even close to what they were on offense a couple years ago, this is a much better defense. It's more than just Chris Jones. And Chris Jones is a great, great player. But they add George Karlaftis to that defense. He's a good young pass rusher they have on the edge to complement Chris Jones. And then Nick Bolton is a very good linebacker in the middle of that field for the Chiefs. And then you also have at corner Snead out there. Snead's very good. And what an accomplishment for the Chiefs. A disappointing year for them and their standards. A down year. They do have to go on the road. And they beat the Bills. And the Bills beat them in the regular season at Arrowhead. They've overcome some of these issues. And they're back in the championship again. Again, 6 straight seasons in the championship game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, what a start to a career. Andy Reid, another championship game for him. And the pressure. This is what's strange. The pressure, though, is going to be on the Ravens. And how dangerous is it, and we can talk about in the preview, of having Patrick Mahomes, no one's expecting anything of him all of a sudden. They're the underdog. They're going in, and they don't have the high expectations of Super Bowl or bust for the Chiefs. I think that's really dangerous for the Ravens. And the Ravens have to be thinking, okay, The Chiefs are down this year. They're in the playoffs. And yet we still have to face them in the conference championship. We have to beat Patrick Mahomes. That's what's standing in our way to get to the Super Bowl. Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, the two championship games, they're both interesting for this reason, is because they have not faced each other in the regular season. That's what's different. And what's also intriguing about this Chiefs-Ravens is they've never actually played in the playoffs. They haven't played in the playoffs yet against each other, which is amazing with all the success on both sides. And they have not played in the playoffs to this point. And you have the two MVP quarterbacks up against each other. And then the Lions and the 49ers haven't played each other this season either. So there's some mystery there. You can't just look back at the regular season. You won't know exactly what it's going to look like until they're on the field together. And yes, I'm going to say it in the preview too, both these games are outdoor, on grass, and from the forecasts I've seen, in Baltimore, it's just going to be cold. I don't really like rain games and championship games. I don't like to see balls getting dropped. I don't like to see balls slipping through guys' hands because it's a wet ball and unnecessary fumbles. I like to have cold, clean games where it's just tough and gritty games, and that's what it looks like we're going to have in Baltimore. And then San Francisco, it's supposed to be kind of humid and warm for January. We're talking about mid-60s. So that's favorable for the 49ers because of how much Purdy struggled in the rain. And then how the Lions go look on grass. The Lions have played so many games inside and on turf. Now they're going outside and playing on the grass, on the road, against a team that's also very physical and very tough. I mean, that's going to be a physical game. 49ers and Lions, you're going to talk about a lot of hits. It's going to be a black and blue game. So let's look forward to those games. We'll have time to preview them. What we do have is two quality games and two matchups that we have not seen in the regular season.